She was teaching. Wasn't she teaching? She was doing everything she knows about kids with autism. And scholarships for those different disabilities, but specifically.
Yes. For lemon, I say we'll incorporate that as every
Yeah, her body was. That's good. Yeah, so she's doing really well. She's
Still
married
singing?
last
Won't you get married? I was just gonna ask
Yeah,
that.
just celebrities, in May, first met her. She met her, that's the landscape Tuesday.
At where?
Landscape,
At Landscape.
yeah.
We're probably not gonna start right away.
Actually, no, they live in Marion. He works in Dakota.
It's gonna be pretty intense.
Makes sense.
The people that live out, for the water plant north of us, great, they live across the street from her, across the road. And she works at graphics at Sioux Falls, and he works at big livestock places, you say? No. And then the girl goes to school in Michigan. So
That's
that's
kind of halfway between the island and money.
Well,
so they
I
both
was
drive.
over that Facebook and I saw some of those guys.
Courtney was, they lived in St.
Oh, they'd have to read it to us.
Found out from Marion.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
It's recorded.
Just
It is.
like one thing with one type thing.
Oh, what?
Yeah, they.
I should show you.
They're like one branch.
Shauna, Vegas, was a girl racer. It's been on Grove Street, Railways. And she stayed with a friend who has a ranch. And she has, that's the lemurs. And many donkeys that are adorable. And they went trail riding the other day. Yeah, she's, I was over. No. Yeah, these are fish. And the grass where they were riding, the grass was long. And these pigs could see above the grass. So they were out, the pigs were loose with the horses. And the dogs were going like this, so they fences, they weren't so tough. So then they went to Remington Park, they had an exotic race in the zebra. Just hilarious. And so they're not little pigs. So, I asked her, I said, I was around they're going ballistic. Come here. everyone, can you hear me?
I can't see you, so I hope so. Hello, thank you for coming to Common Thread, the Barn Quilt Project wrap-up. My name is Shannon Cole, and I'm the Executive Director of the Vermillion Cultural Association, one of the organizations that helped lead this project. We're here today to share with you the story of the Barn Quilt Project, South Dakota Strong, and its origins and goals, the realities on the ground, the lessons we learned, and the importance of community art and making things together. First, I'd like to, before I get started with the details, I'd like you to meet the team. So we have me. We have Ariadne Albright, who is the director and founder of Creative Care. We'll talk more about her business in a moment. We have Susan Hegestead, who is my current board president of the Vermillion Cultural Association and a local artist and do-gooder. We have Alanya Durebeck, who was one of our arts and health facilitators on the road. We have Rebecca Freilich, who was also one of our facilitators and artists. Lindsay Sire is here with us today, also one of our artists. Everybody else is an artist. Maddie Skillman, wonderful. She just had her senior show up at USD. Heather Steffen is here with us today. And Rosemary Buckman, who also works with Area and Creative Care and at Sanford Arts Vermillion. Okay, so you'll be hearing from me today, you'll be hearing from Ari, and you'll be hearing from Susan, and then the team is on hand to share stories with you and to answer any questions you have about the events as we had our adventures. Okay, so I want to start with the way you start a quilt. You start with piecing your fabric together, right? And so you've got all these disparate parts and you lay them out into a pattern that starts to make sense. And our first piece was Ari and Creative Care. So Creative Care is Ari's arts making business where she has an arts and health slant, and we'll talk about arts and health in a minute, to provide meaningful arts program in a healthcare setting, both for healthcare workers and for patients and any other clients that want to have an art making experience. And those arts experiences are to help your overall wellness and sense of health and well-being. She also does arts engagement training for staff and young artists. And she wants to make sure that those artists know that there's work for them and that they can be paid a livable wage to do their artwork. So Ari saw a request for proposal from the CDC Foundation in October of 2021. And they were looking to use arts to inspire what they called vaccine confidence. And now remember, October 2021 was post-Delta, pre-Omicron. So some folks have been vaccinated, but we never really reached that like nationwide 70% goal that the administration had set. And there was still a lot of disinformation being circulated about vaccines, and we hadn't hit the absolute most contagious version of the virus yet. So there was still a lot of uncertainty and fear, and kids couldn't get vaccinated yet. There was just a lot of things swirling in the atmosphere that I'm sure you remember. And so Ari saw this request for proposal to use arts to engage folks to have a health conversation. And she reached out to Susan as part of my organization and said, would you guys like to be part of this as a 501c3? Maybe you could be the fiscal agent to sponsor this grant with me. I have an idea. I have an art project idea. And we said, well, by golly, we're in the business of providing arts opportunities. And so for our community and for our region, and we thought, why not make that statewide? So we gave it a whirl. We applied to create together. I didn't proofread my slides when I switched them to PowerPoint. To create together an arts and community health project that isn't just on an individual level, but sort of takes it on tour, takes it statewide, and makes sure that we have a message about community wellness and not just individual wellness. And, so we applied for that grant and we were accepted. The VCA and Creative Care together were awarded $75,000 to use what they called arts and culture organizations to, again, build vaccine confidence for COVID-19. And they rolled in seasonal influenza in some cases. That was up to the individual, a grantee, as to whether or not they wanted to do that. And again, the mission of this grant, they were hoping, was you would take these money, you would develop arts projects, whether that's, I'm getting ahead of myself. We were one of 181 applicants and only one of 30 awarded nationwide. And then each of these 30 organizations has a different idea about what they're going to do with this money. Some of them are going to re-grant it to individual artists. Some of them are using it to make a film about vaccine confidence and the importance of vaccines. And we chose barn quilts, which we'll get to in a moment. So again, we had a goal of creating arts events that would help inspire acceptance that the vaccines are safe, to counter disinformation that was out there, and to just kind of start the conversation about vaccination, which is a bold thing to do, especially, you know, as a young woman entering into the South Dakota wilds. We learned some things. Okay, so again, our barn quilt proposal was selected as one of 30. We were the only one in South Dakota, and we were the only ones in the Plains states selected. So we were like right in the sweet spot. And why barn quilts? Well, this mostly comes from Ari's brain, so I'll let her talk a little bit more about that. But just as a baseline, quilting is a very important part of South Dakota history. It's an art form that is cross-cultural. Both the native communities in South Dakota and the European immigrants used quilting to represent important things, important markers of their life, to bring community together, for women to come together and sew and talk and discuss and make. And then quilts themselves became representations of communities or comfort across the landscape in South Dakota with barn quilts. Little colorful displays of someone is here and someone cares about this place. And so we thought, we like that, and we want to say that someone cares about this space and someone cares about this community together, and let's make some barn quilts. So I'll have Ari talk a little bit more, wait a minute, Ari, not yet, talk a little bit more about her specific inspiration around barn quilts, but that was sort of the initial thread here. So Ari also had an idea. Right away she knew, she had a vision for where she wanted to go and how she wanted to present this project across the state. And she chose 9 communities, and 9 because, as you can see, there's a 9 square quilt pattern, perfect square, 9, 3 across, 3 down. And so we sort of followed that template. We had 3 regions, 9 communities total, and they were chosen primarily because of their, well, in part, I would say not primarily, because of their low vaccination rates. So as of October 2021, the first dose of vaccine had only been delivered to, a lower percentage of the population in these places. And so we sort of marked them as a good place to start those conversations. And then there were some personal reasons too as to why to get on the road to go here. Again, we launched, so our first set of tours to somewhere were in early February. And we really got the sense, as we got underway and on the road, that this was really, that we were just in time. Because early February was that sort of ebb of the Omicron. I think here it was sort of like peak Omicron, but in other places it was kind of ebbing Omicron. And we felt we were just in time, that we had gotten in the field just at a critical time to help people who hadn't yet been vaccinated really pick that up, because the COVID was getting worse, right? And we really needed to combat that. So we really felt like we were spot on. And as you know, a stitch in time saves 9. And so we were here to start helping, hopefully, save some folks. And I'm going to have Ari talk a little bit more about her inspirations and the project.
Hi, everybody. I can't see you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, good. My name's Ariadne Albright. I'm so grateful that you weathered the rain to come out and hear us talk today. I work here in Vermillion. I am an arts and health instructor at the University of South Dakota. All the team are facilitators that I've worked with in one time or another. It's often in healthcare settings, but we certainly can reach educational and community settings. The training comes from the faith of the College of Fine Arts in shaping one course into a full certificate program, which we've offered since 2017. And then amidst all that, I got bit by the bug, I guess, and I started doing some national work for the National Organization for Arts and Health as the professionalization committee chair. So we developed the things that professionals need, scope of practice, code of ethics, those kinds of things. And we've just finished up the core curriculum for arts and health professionals, which will lead to a national exam and accreditation for all the work that we're doing. But on a personal note, this project was inspired by my experiences. And I think everyone has a variety of experiences with the pandemic. As an educator like that, all my students were gone and working remotely. And so we had to adjust and respond. As an artist on the South Dakota Arts Council roster, all my residencies were canceled. As the program coordinator at Sanford Vermillion Medical Center, internships were sent home. And some of the other internships that we had, we tried to suss out, remotely. And if my life was that disrupted, I can only imagine what others were. Sanford kept me on as an essential worker, and I'm extremely grateful for that because, there were weekly tests and update meetings, and I got to see the pandemic experience from a lot of different angles. But also what was really moving and critical for me were the conversations I was having in my community. And then we got distanced, and then we went home, and then it turned into calls with my family. And most of the audience is made up of my family today, so thank you. But even among us, there were all these, different conversations and high emotions and all wrapped around vaccines, etc. So when I heard this request for proposal about vaccine confidence, I was like, well, I had to get it right away because I was an early adapter because I wanted to work. I never really questioned it. But then as time went by, more questions and more information or disinformation came out. So I like to work and I also like to travel, and I'm just fine with the decisions I made. But can we do the next slide? So I came up with this idea. My sister has a fabric shop. I can't sew a stitch, but I'm in that community a little bit. And I gathered this team, and not everybody could take a week out of their life to come travel with me, but most of you did, and I'm so grateful for that. And the basic question that I was going to ask in this outreach is, how'd you guys do? How's it going? What happened to you? And that was the premise. And like Shannon was alluding to, a lot of our instincts were right. I mean, once we got the award, it's like, let's go. Let's get out into the field. It's winter. Everybody's going to be inside. We got a good chance of reaching people. I'm very secure in the act of making as a way just to come together and kind of relax and reduce the stress. And once we were starting to create together, at least create an environment to share some of these experiences. But I'm not a pitch woman for any one opinion or another. And what I was really surprised by with these instincts before we even got started is that most people were very excited to be a part of an art exhibition. They'd not seen themselves as a creator, and so we hooked that in as part of our talking points whenever we had a session. But I'm also a South Dakotan, and we come with a little grit. And I think it was really valuable to be culturally sensitive. if we're moving around, through ranch communities, farmlands, education, like university towns, etc. Oops, thanks. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. So there's quite a few things that didn't go so well, and one was scheduling. First region, we rented spaces. I thought, y'all come. We've got Facebook, we've got press releases, we've got ads in the paper. Come. And it was really friends and friends of friends that made the effort. People weren't quite ready to just, trust an ad and walk out of their house. There's also a little bit, I didn't write it in print, but there's a little bit of stranger danger going on. And that came from my team as well as the communities we went to. And so that was something that we needed to overcome, which meant that as the project lead, I had some of the strongest conversations I've ever had with people that are willing to express their experiences and their opinions. And it's not that we convinced anybody one way or another, but we did create a space for that. And I suppose as a 57-year-old woman, I should be ready for those kind of talks, and they all turned out pretty well. I remember, I'm going to digress for a second, but one of the ways we countered stranger danger or visitors in Buffalo, do you remember that? I started every conversation with, would it help you to know that I'm Tony Albright's sister? And then, that started the conversation, and we weren't so odd that we're coming way out in the boonies and wanting to make art with each other. The only other thing was weather, of course, and we saw all of it, the rain and the snow and the ice and good weather too. Yeah, essentially it's a love letter to South Dakota and my family and friends and the people that we met on the road. Mm-hmm. So we responded to what we learned on the road, and we started going to people instead of having them come to our events. And that's the veterans home, that's a domestic shelter, schools, community settings, 27 in all. Wachipi here, we traveled 2,000 miles. Our support material, our wellness cards, our posters, they were translated into Spanish as well as English and Lakota. One of the attractive parts, maybe for those of you that have already been in the gallery, are those beautiful recycled clothing that have been turned into fine art papers. And that kept people entertained and working out their designs for hours. We had, in addition to 5 quilt patterns that people could work from or just roll off and do their own thing, we also had 5 writing prompts that we developed with BJ Buckley, one of the gals that I've worked with for years, and we came up with writing prompts about the pandemic, but also leaning in a positive manner so that they could express maybe good things that happened or who helped you, etc. And in addition to providing resources for the VCA and Creative Care and the team and travel, I was so happy that we were encouraged and budgeted for stipends, small stipends, but to artists and healthcare providers that promoted our work and were advocates of what we were doing. So in all, with those regions, we interacted with 532 people in a very short period of time. And then it turns out midway, can I tell a story now? Yes? This came out of going to Pine Ridge, and we got stuck in an ice storm, and so we were a day late. And we heard from the art teacher, hey, we got a field trip. And so it's really not a good day to come. And we just persevered, and we showed up at the Pine Ridge High School. And when we were met at the door, I've never seen anything like it. Every student in that high school went on the road trip. It was absolutely empty. And that's when Rosemary and I decided, okay, we're going to make art kits, leave them for the teams, for the teachers and the students. And we left about 100 there that day. So that's why those numbers are so big. Oh, I'm almost done. Team rules. Pretty simple. Stay friendly. Take care of yourself and of each other. Be generous. And when the conversations got a little tough, remember that it's all about the art. And so, since it's a small group and this is the first time that all of us have been together, I'm just going to say a quick thank you, if that's all right, to the team. Susan, for being an artist friend and so articulate and so intelligent, kept us on track. And Shannon, you're very fun in addition to producing really high quality reports, which artists need, especially with the CDC Foundation. We got to thank BJ for being prolific and helping behind the scenes. Rebecca Freilich, which you'll get to hear from all of them, she is in charge of the majority of the designs and social media posts. And for any of you that have been following, you'll see a cohesiveness and a beauty, and I really want to thank you for that. She's inclined towards leadership, and so when we were on the road, we had to tell her to stop working and have fun. Do you remember that? Yeah. Alanya is my niece and the youngest of the team, and it turned out because she was raised in Belfouche, she was really good culturally with that Region 1, and so glad that you came along. Lindsay, playful, godly, generous, and very efficient with your energy. Rosemary, it was just the two of us in Region 2, and she's a workhorse like I am. Former art teacher of 30 years, and couldn't have done it without that kind of partnership. Maddie, curious, hopeful, very kind. It was really nice that you put us on your schedule with all the other things that you had to do, wrapping up and presenting this project at Idea Fest for the USD students, letting them know about the arts and health field. Really appreciate that extra work. And Heather, it's been since 2014, I think I've been calling on you for projects, and you're enthusiastic, you're very funny, and hardworking. So I'd take you all anywhere. Yeah. Do I have more to say? Oh, yes, look at this. We cannot say causation. We cannot say causation, yeah. That in the time that we started till April, that there's been this major shift in percentages, but I don't think we did any harm by normalizing and having those hundreds of conversations that are just out in the wind now, but you know, we kept it positive and safe. Yeah. So that we didn't even know about until just a few days ago. It's quite a shift. So thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Susan now. And
And don't stop before I introduce myself. My primary goal is as a cheerleader and a facilitator, and so I also want to thank Ari as a wonderful example and mentor friend, and Shannon, who did so much work, and their team. They are the backbone of this project, and you'll get to talk to that. You'll hear from them a little bit more, and you'll get to talk to them in the gallery and see some of these projects. This is a really wonderful way to celebrate community and to support each other. It really is pretty profoundly moving to be a part of this, but I can't take very much credit, and so the fact that I'm up here speaking and I'm the last scheduled speaker is kind of a fluke. I get to be a cheerleader for you all and hopefully leave you with some big picture thinking as it relates to the arts. So my name is Susan Hegestad. I am a Vermillion artist, a longtime arts educator, arts advocate. What I will share with you today primarily is as my role in the Vermillion Cultural Association as its current board president. So I have worked in arts and healthcare. I had a few years working with Ari and learning a great deal from her. You didn't have to convince me of the power of the arts, but certainly my experience in arts and health changed my life considerably, armed me with additional really wonderful information about the power of the arts to change lives. And so you've heard quite a bit about that role, arts in supporting wellness and mental health and health. I would like to share some additional thoughts about the power of the arts, and I'm definitely going to be a little bit of a cheerleader for us, our organization, and for our community, and thinking bigger. So personally, my personal belief is that, the arts are really all about who we are as people. They are central to our humanity. So the Vermillion Cultural Association has been in existence for a handful of years, and Vermillion is rich with cultural organizations and artists and creators of all types. But particular to our organization is, we run these theaters. This is kind of who we are. Initially started saving these small town theaters from going under, and that has blossomed to much more. So we are a nonprofit organization. We are a nonprofit arts and culture organization specifically, and you can feel free to advance whenever you want, Shannon. And in the last year and a half, our organization did some big thinking, new strategic goals, a mission for ourselves, and that was to streamline a little bit what we ourselves do day to day down to 4 primary pillars. And these are based on the things that we've been doing and experiences we've had. One, obviously, is continuing to run the theater. It's central to who we are, but we also recognize that cinema, if I want to talk about it more highbrow, or the movies, it's very democratic. It's an art form that most people can relate to, most people feel comfortable coming to and interacting with, and has meaning for most people. But in addition to that, obviously we have a gallery, and you'll have a chance to pop in there if you haven't already. That's our visual arts pillar. We also support music and food. And this past year we had a really fantastically unexpected success in sponsoring this competition between downtown restaurants for the best burger, a burger battle. And it was crazy, the amount of response that people had to that, and they love that. And it makes sense though, because everybody can rally around food and appreciate food. There are a lot of experiences in arts and culture that are accessible for everyone, and that's important to us. We want to continue to support that and lift that up. But to come full circle to this particular project, one of the really big picture goals that we wanted to focus on was to help lift up these wonderful ideas of others in our community. So, why would we do this? We don't have to own and do everything, right? Vermillion is rich, Clay County is rich with poets and theater artists and visual artists and makers of all sorts, and we knew that we could fulfill that role. And so when Ari came to me, I was very honored and touched. I didn't question for 1 second whether this was a great idea. Her impeccable professionalism and her ideas, I knew that this would be great for our organization, as well as for our community, to help people see what the potential is. This idea of supporting wellness and the vaccine confidence is great, and that's one thing, but also for me personally, I was very excited about modeling a way that we could support one another, celebrate the things that we all have in common, and really boost someone's idea, this great, fantastic idea that she wouldn't have been able to probably tackle without an organization like ours. So, do we have one more advance there? Yep. So, a big part of that was deciding that we will act as fiscal agent for these projects, and we want to lift them up, and we want to support where we can. I had facts sprinkled through from Americans for the Arts, but I will just say in a nutshell that most of us believe that the arts are important to all of us, and that accessible arts experiences matter, right? So in all of the ways that we can support events or cultural interactions for folks that are as accessible and meaningful as possible, that's what we want to do. I think we have.
They're not seeing the statistics.
Oh, I see. That's okay.
Is that you might be done?
Well, I thought I had two.
Nope.
It's okay.
Nope,
It
you
doesn't
only have
matter.
these 2 slides.
So I'll just wrap up by saying what I think is really meaningful for us in uplifting this project, these stories, and we want to do more of this. And going forward, our organization is really looking forward to having more of these big picture conversations with others in the community. We think we can think bigger as a community and a region. We can have conversations about what it means to think next level. We already have fantastic amenities and facilities and groups. We're home to the South Dakota Shakespeare Festival, a National Music Museum. We've kept our small town theaters alive. We have a really robust community theater. We have a million things. We're not interested necessarily in inventing new things, but we want to bring all of those forces together to continue to have these kinds of high-level goals. And along that line, we will be hosting some community conversations coming up in the coming months around what we can do even better as a community, and hopefully with the goal of forming an arts commission for Vermillion, like Sioux Falls has, like some other communities have, because that's what's going to take us down this road that I think Aries Project really exemplifies, that we have the potential to make really profound impact, and that starts with us recognizing the power of the arts and sharing that with one another. I'm going to give it back to Shannon, and I think we'll have time for question and answer and stories with the rest of the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you to Ari. And we do have time now for questions. I'm going to bring the whole team up here. If everybody's ready, remember how we were going to stand up here? And if you have questions about arts and health as a field, if you have questions about what it was like on the road, or questions about how to write grant emails, we are here to answer those things for you. So it is hard for us to see, so I would recommend just shouting out if you have a question, and we'll pass the mic and give you an answer.
What would you say is your one personal growth through this whole project?
Personal growth?
I am not a team player. I am now. Yeah.
There you go.
I am getting back into the mindset of being able to travel, which is pretty fun after these past couple years.
Yeah, I'd say that the pandemic has been a tough time for folks who like to be in control and plan everything like I do. And so, there were some bumps on the road along our travels and different ways that we had to adapt. And I think that was a big personal growth moment, was learning how to adapt, go with the flow, and, accept that sometimes you need to let a few things go along the way.
I would say for me it was just confidence that it took to go into these communities. We're strangers, like you mentioned earlier, so it was a little scary at I was a little nervous at first, but just the confidence that it built, and like through the connection and the project, specifically like art making, you know, it built confidence in me personally, just through connecting with others.
I feel like my biggest growth moment, or my personal growth throughout all of this, was having to do with, putting yourself out there to invite people in, and then, bringing them to the table and working with them and working through it all. But that invitation is so important, and the way that is done makes a difference in whether or not the person is going to say yes and come to the table or not.
I think for me, my personal growth moment was, I like instructions, and I feel like I should know how things are going to go, but then on this adventure that I had, I met so many different people that every single person was a different experience, and I ran into a lot of emotions, and so the whole trip was very emotional. So my personal growth was taking on other people's, like learning how to take on other people's emotions and deal with that.
I'd say my personal growth was from Ari. She is a good pusher, and she helps me step out of my comfort zone and like do a lot of things that I normally wouldn't. So like this, I don't like speaking, and here I am.
Any other questions?
In talking about the different emotions you all had to deal with, was it also, did you notice a difference in the culture, say, between East River and West River? I know there are differing attitudes, so to speak. Did you notice that? Was it something you had to adapt to?
So the question is about different attitudes between East River, West River. What cultural differences did we encounter? Does anyone have any comparative stories or things that were surprising?
I can just speak on it. I guess for me, culturally, we went to so I was part of Region 3, so we went to Chamberlain, Watertown, and Vermillion. And for me, there was a huge cultural difference between Chamberlain and Watertown, and then Vermillion. But the attitudes were not all that different. I'd say just in Chamberlain, we got to go to the St. Joseph's School, and that was a great cultural experience. Just seeing all the kids, and the quilting patterns that they chose the hardest one, which was God's Eye. And that was really cool to see, because when we went to like Watertown, per se, people would choose more like the friendship pattern. And so it was just really cool to see the different, the cultural differences, I guess you could say, but the attitudes of the pandemic experiences weren't all that different, I would say, for me, the people that I ran into, so.
I might speak to that a little bit. I did notice West River, which is where the family's from. I wanted to start with the hardest region in my mind. Vaccine rates were the lowest. The population is also very low. There's a lot of room out there. And so when we had our conversations in Lemon, in Buffalo, and Belle Fourche, there's a certain, like an independence that was a thread all the way through. And like, yep, we got this. This is what happened. This was our approach. Some of it was herd immunity. Some of it was vaccines. Most of it wasn't masked. And they had it. And they had their community together. And they were so beautifully knit. and supportive of each other. Because I don't think any of us really got out of this thing without a little roughing up, and some people more than others. And so that rugged individualism that they talk about in our part of the world, that was very strong, West River.
Anything else?
Shall we share some stories then? Yeah.
Time for stories. Excellent. Are we just going to go one at a time, Mary? How are we doing this?
Whoever wants to talk.
All right.
We could just
If you want to come up here too, like, so you kind of one person at a time, come up here, give your story.
So I have a cute little story from Belfouche, where I'm from. We had the pleasure of going to the Belfouche Elementary School on a Friday when the kids didn't have school, but they have this optional service they could come to hang out with their friends, make crafts, play sports, that sort of thing. And so we were all in a big circle around hanging out with these, I would say, like mostly first and second graders, maybe some older kids. And to get them more engaged, I kind of asked them about the towns that we were going to, if anyone had ever heard of them, and we got some few, yeah, I've heard of that place. And then to bring it back to art, I asked about kids' favorite colors, and so I would say a color and have kids raise their hands to let us know that they liked that color. And after I thought I had gotten through every color, there was this one little girl who made a point to tell Ari that I had forgotten the color pink, and that was her favorite color. And so I got informed that I had forgotten the color pink, and she ended up coming to our event the next day with her grandma, and she made probably 6, if not more, projects, more than anyone that day probably, and she made ones for some of our team members to take home with us, and lots of glitter glue, and it was really, really great to see her want to be involved. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
Say, could you state your names before you begin your stories? So you know who's-
I'm Alanya
Okay,
Drabeck.
thank you.
Yeah.
Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca Freilich. Let me know if you can't hear me. Looks good. Okay. So I went to Region 1, which was Northwest South Dakota. So that was Lemon, Buffalo, and Belfouche. And we had a really fun experience in Buffalo working with some ladies from the Prairie Points Quilt Guild. They've got some really talented and masterful quilters in that group. They actually have a big quilt sale over Memorial Day, and they put their quilts in shows and everything else. And one woman who we met there is one of the lead quilters of the group, but she said she hadn't had any kind of social outings for the whole time during the pandemic, and this was really her first one. So it was a meaningful experience for her to come and share her skills with us. And she actually brought her own quilt that she made, that she called her Corona quilt, because it was made with this motif that was kind of spiked around this central image, so it looked kind of like a coronavirus quilt block, but it was something really beautiful. And she also told us all kinds of great stories about her time, like working for the McGovern campaign and doing lots of things throughout South Dakota history. And it was one of those kind of interactions that you don't really get most of the time, where you can really, dig deep into the state's history and get to hear it firsthand. So that was really special. And she made a crazy quilt that you can see out in the gallery as well.
Hello everyone, I'm Lindsay, and I also was an artist, a part of Region 1. There's so many stories, but the one that I chose to share with you all today is from Lemon, South Dakota. And there was just this, I should preface that Lanya and Rebecca and I were promoting the event the day before at the Senior Center, and we met these lovely folks, yes, and there was just these this group of women that we were talking to, and we were sharing about the project, and you could just see the curiosity that they had. And there was this one woman that just kept asking a whole bunch of questions, because she was like, why are you guys here? Yeah. But at our event the next day, she showed up, she walked through the door, and she made it very clear that she will not be participating in the project, but because she is not an artist. But she just wants to get to know what we're doing, what everyone's up to. And so after she had some coffee and got a chat with some of her friends, I invited her over to set up my table. And I was working with another lady at that time too. And they knew each other, of course, and we're having good conversation, and then eventually I just kind of subtly asked if she wants to look through the papers, which ones she likes, and this curiosity kind of led to an investment, because she ended up actually finishing a barn quilt, and she loved it, and she said that she wants to frame it, and it's here today, and yeah, so I just felt like that story was, it encapsulated kind of the safety that this project could create to build that confidence for people, and yeah, it was a fun time.
Thanks, Lindsay. My name is Rosemary. I worked with Region 2, so that was Hot Springs, Pine Ridge, and Martin, South Dakota. Interestingly, I believe this is probably the only occurrence, my story, where we actually had a participant come in who had already made some quilt blocks, paper collages like what we were doing. This woman comes in, and it's cold, and she's all bundled up, and she comes in, and she has a big tote full of stuff, and she's unwrapping it all, and she's like, well, hi, this is the barn quilt stuff, right? Oh, okay, so I brought some that I already made. I'm like, okay, let's see them. And in the process, she pulls them out, and these are gorgeous paper collages, just beautiful. And so we visit and have snacks, and everybody starts getting comfortable. And then so we get her to sit down and work, and she starts talking about herself, and then I'm like, I know you. I think, weren't you an art teacher before? Because I used to be an art teacher too. I just retired. She's like, yeah, I retired a couple of years ago. And it turns out we had met at various teacher conferences years ago. And she was a great person that, she stuck with me because I remembered her after all these years. And anyway, she's quite the character, a good storyteller. She's also an accomplished musician and singer. And anyway, so it was an interesting thing to touch base with her again after not seeing her for years and years. But I don't think any of the other locations, we had any artists come in with the projects already made, basically. I thought that was a very unique story.
Hello again. I'm Heather Steffen, and I went to Region 3. I would like to tell you a story today about Watertown. We went to a coffee shop in Watertown. It was called Gather Coffee Shop. And this group, it was two ladies. They came in, they were one of the first people to come in, and they didn't really know what to expect. It was a retired farm grandmother and her granddaughter. And the granddaughter seemed visually upset. And at first I was like, how do I deal with this? I don't really know what's wrong. But then she told me straight up, my cat died yesterday. And it was really sad. But I turned it around for her. This project really did turn it around for her. The colored paper with all the patterns and the glitter and the colors just had her reeling. Like, she was just going through everything. She was making a nine patch quilt, but of course she wanted like a million patches because she loved all the patterns. But after I turned her attitude around, and she was feeling a little more happy, I did talk to her grandmother, who was a quilter, and she had quilted her entire life. And she was actually teaching her granddaughter how to quilt as well. But what I thought was the most interesting and touching thing about talking to her was that she said the pandemic actually boomed her business. She said that women were at home without hobbies and they needed something to do, and quilting brought everyone together. And so she shared with me that she would take the fabrics and cut them and send them out to different women in her town. And I thought that was really interesting. And then I started asking her more questions about her own quilts. And she herself has 2 quilts in museums right now, one in Washington, D.C., and the other in California. And I thought it was really cool that she also made 3D quilts. She would take fabrics and cut them into various shapes, such as flowers, and then layer them on top of each other. And the one in Washington, D.C. actually was a pheasant representing South Dakota. And I thought that was pretty cool. But all in all, I was so glad to meet the 2 of them, because at the end of the day, the little girl was hugging me and laughing and smiling and giving me just, the greatest vibes, and that really touched my heart.
Hi, I'm Maddie from Region 3, and the story that I have is about the unknowns that we encountered. And so we were in Watertown, and we were going to the Boys and Girls Club to work with what we thought was staff. We get there, and about 100 felt like kids just pulling on us and like asking what we were gonna do, and it ended up being great. They adapted well, and it just showed how much this project is adaptable, and yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Can I go again?
Oh, yeah. One more time. Okay, wonderful. So I want to answer your question again. I want to do over, Jill. What I learned that was unexpected, but I'd hoped, was that art can really do some heavy lifting in our community. And the second thing, and the last thing I wanted to say, is these stories, when you lift up the barn quilts, they're written for you. They wanted to share their experiences, even if it was, leveling up in Minecraft or learning how to cook with their parents. They had you in mind, and I'm so grateful that there's an audience. We have barn quilt kits to take away and to share with others. All you need is white glue and scissors. And I think we're going to have cake at 2:30. So I'm going to pass it back to Shannon, and thank you again.
Yes, thank you all for coming. I do want to invite you to go, if you have not had the opportunity, check out the quilts in the gallery. As Ari said, there's stories to lift up and read. There's some of them printed on sneeze guards, a little on trend. And I also just wanted to say thanks on behalf of the Vermillion Cultural Association. Ari, it was an honor being part of this. I thank you all for your hard work. And what was the last thing I was going to say? I don't remember. I'm just so proud. I'm so proud to have been part of this. I'm so proud of you all. And enjoy the paper, paper quilts, enjoy the cake, and I'll see you in there. Thank you.
Thank you.